So today I'm going to be talking about artificial grammars and how they relate to learnability and typology. As a linguist, what we want to do is we want to understand how language works. And in order to understand how language works, so generally speaking, there's kind of two main things that we want to know. One is, well, what are languages? How are they similar to each other? How are they different to each other? And we look at that in terms of the typologies that we find when we look at different languages across the world. And of course, we also want to know how a person might actually come to know such languages that we have. And of course, that's learnability. So a natural extension then is that people have proposed that learnability and typology should be related. And this has been proposed many times in many extremely important works and theories of grammar. Okay. So recently, there has been a lot of progress in trying to create this relationship using artificial grammars. Okay? And this research has helped to support that typologies and what we actually know about language are learnable. So in an artificial grammar learning task, what we do is we have a miniature version of a language that's used to test all sorts of questions about learnability, generalizability, and of course linguistic structure. And all of the results that we find seem to suggest that an ideal language are maximally learnable. And so that's going to be the argument or idea that I'm going to be proposing in this talk today. Now, when we think about language, and as we study language, especially as linguists, we think that language learning ought to be hard. Because when you look at languages, we know they are complex, they are abstract, they contain a lot of things. So when we teach people about linguistics, we teach them about all the different parts of language, like the phonology, the phonetics, the morphology, the semantics, the pragmatics, everything. So there's so much going on in language, and when we try to learn a new language as an adult, it is very, very difficult. And when we try to explain a language or characterize a language as a linguist, we also know that it is very hard. Otherwise, most of us would not have jobs if it were easy. So we think that, given how complicated languages are, they ought to be very difficult to learn. However, when it's your first language, it doesn't seem to be quite so hard in terms of the relative aspect. If you ever seen a child trying to speak or understand language, we know that it's not as easy as some people would like to paint it out. They're definitely working very hard, and there's a lot to learn. But in terms of learnability, it's relatively fast, and it's relatively universal. As long as you are a baby in an enriched speaking environment, you have access to people using language, you're going to learn language. It doesn't even matter if that language is spoken or signed, you seem to pick it up. So how do they do it? So this kind of idea is that babies seem to be lucky in that the things that they have to learn are out there to be learned. So many people have proposed different mechanisms that might induce this. So we know Chomsky has proposed a linked transition device, and so some kind of innate universal grammar that's already sort of pre there. When we're there, we know exactly what we're supposed to be looking for when we're trying to learn a language. But then also we have cognition, general cognitive mechanisms, like our attentional span, what we like to look at, what we like to hear, and memory. So the fact that we remember certain things better than others might help us determine regularities. And I'm not going to argue for any kind of theory here. All I think, just like any debate, there has to be some of both, and they interact in really interesting ways. And of course, doing these kind of experiments might shed some light on this, but I am going to remain agnostic as to this. What I'm going to sort of argue is that languages work with what we got. So we got some kind of innate thing, maybe something, but we also have cognition, we have memory, we have attention, we have these things, and languages make use of this to be learnable. So one way that we know that humans interact with the environment is by keeping track of statistics. Okay? Now, of course, we do not carry around the abacus in our head as we walk around, and we don't do this necessarily consciously, but humans seem to be very good at detecting things that are frequent and detecting things that are infrequent, and somehow tracking this. Right? So in a really famous study by Jessica May, they kind of showed that one way that we might develop, say, phonological categories is by distributions. So if we know that bimodal distributions might lead to two different distinct categories, whereas a unimodal distinction might lead to one. So this is one way in which we might be able to pick up on cues from the environment based on what we know. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is how we can address these kind of ideas with miniature languages. So in miniature languages, what we do is we train adult participants, and obviously you can do infants and kids, but I'm saying adult here because all of the experiments are with adults, so just so you know. The language that you're exposing them to is maybe an artificial language, it could even be a real language, but we've made it up. And it's like a real language in that it has phonemes and morphemes and things like that, but of course we've controlled it and pared it down so that we can learn it in hopefully one single session. So we can get people in and out very quickly, which allows us to test a lot more things than we could if we were testing whole languages or a second language learning environment in a classroom, for example. So it gives us a lot more efficiency in what we want to test. And so by doing this very quickly, kind of short and sweet little experiment, we can then get a better sense of what patterns are going to be easy and difficult to learn. So the very basic way of relating learnability to typology is that if you are typologically a pattern, you're going to be easier to learn. If you are a typologically infrequent pattern or just a non-existent pattern that's unattested, then it will be difficult to learn or very, very, very hard. So the reason why we do artificial grammars is because it gives us the level of control that is just not really possible in real situations. So for example, as you will see, in a lot of these experiments, we can control for things in nice, clean ways. So we can make everything very similar and compare them so that we know that the only difference between language A and language B is exactly what we're thinking about. So we don't have to worry about some of the other things that get in the way of some of the kind of arguments that sometimes we make about real languages, like in typology, like historical shifts, socialization, language relatedness, etc. So we can sort of remove some of that baggage a little bit. The other thing that's really good is that we can sort of pare it down so that we are only really, we can sort of focus on one thing at a time and allow us to really think about something at one time. When you're looking at a real full language, it's very difficult to do that. Of course, there's ways of doing it, but it makes it a lot easier to do it. And the other thing is that when we bring somebody into a lab in a, say, 30-minute session, they're not learning very much because there's just not enough time to learn a lot. So they're at the early stages of sort of figuring out what this thing is that they're hearing. So that gives us a sense about their biases because it's their expectation of what is it that I'm getting, what am I hearing, and what am I inferring. So that gets us like this kind of core thing where we're not getting baggage from other So in most of the experiments that I'm going to present today, we typically use English speakers who are adults and typically somewhere around 10 to 24 people in each condition, just depending on how robust the findings are. Okay. And what we do is we just have two phases, an exposure phase and a test phase. So the exposure phase, basically you just plop them down in front of a computer in a sterile environment and you tell them that they're going to be listening to words from a novel language and they might be seeing pictures or they may not, depending on whether you care about meaning and things like that. And then you can tell them, hey, don't worry too much about memorizing stuff. You're going to be fine. Just pay attention as best you can because it is actually kind of boring to sit and listen to something for 10 minutes. especially in today's society. So yeah, just do your best. So then they get a test. Most everything that I do uses this two alternative force choice paradigm. Usually you can have somewhere between 20 and 60 items is about the max you want to do. And what's nice about this is that you can directly compare grammatical, say, and ungrammatical, and you can give two different things. What was also nice is with a chance level, something like this, you'd have a kind of baseline that is just assuming no other influence of English or other things. 50% is chance, so you can kind of compare it that way, which makes things nice to sort of have that. So for the rest of this talk, I'm going to be giving some data from experiments relating to technology and learnability, all using this general paradigm. So I'm going to first talk about vowel harmony, and then I'm going to talk a bit about some morphology, and then I'm going to talk about word learning. But don't worry, the word learning is related to morphology. So in the first study, we're looking at vowel harmony languages. And as William mentioned, I did a lot of experiments, and all of these I think were part of some sort of thing about my dissertation, where I really looked at all of these languages and tried to find systematic regularities. Of course, I'm not the only one who's done this, so that I had help from a lot of people who really did most of the work to find out all the different patterns of vowel harmony across all the different languages and which ones are more frequent, which ones are not. And so the idea is that vowel harmony languages that adhere to these tendencies should be in some way more learnable than the ones that don't. So in the first case, we'll look at round harmony, and in the second case, we'll look at gait. Alright. So some background on round harmony is that there is a typological generalization about round harmony, in that mid-vowels are much more likely to trigger harmony than high vowels. And this was cited in several studies, particularly Town talks about this, gives a phonetic explanation for why this might happen. And it's a little bit of a funny explanation, but the idea is that non-high round vowels are marked. There's a constraint that goes around the T, star, row, low, star, row, round, and low, so non-high round vowels are marked. So they're harder to hear the rounding gesture, okay? So if you're a language and you want to keep a contrast of non-high round vowels, one way that you might do that is to have a word, every time there's a non-high round vowel, there's lots of round vowels. So that rounding gesture gets distributed through the whole word, and that should make it easier to hear. So that's kind of the idea, is when you have this rounded vowel that's more marked, and you want to make sure everybody hears what you're saying, you spread it around. So that's the idea of motivation for that typological restriction. So what we'll see is that participants will be more likely to learn the round harmony language with mid-vowel triggers. So what we did was we took speakers who were English and we gave them this round harmony pattern based on stems followed by suffix pairs. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the trigger for harmony. So the stem is always going to be either a mid-vowel and a high vowel, and then the suffix is always going to be, is going to alternate. Sometimes it will be mid, sometimes it will be high, and there'll be two different types of suffixes. So me versus moo, gay versus low. Okay? And those will sometimes appear if you'll get me if the stem is front, round, and moo if it's round, and me if it's unround, moo if it's round, gay if it's unround, low. And we have three conditions. A mid-vowel trigger condition, the stems are only A or O, and then a high vowel trigger condition where the stems are always high. And then we have a control condition just to make sure that there isn't anything wonky going on, just to give a baseline. And those get all of the kinds of stems, so they're not really given any opportunity to really learn anything special about what's happening. They're just pretty empty. And you can kind of see this in the table, the kind of words you're going to get in the high vowel trigger, E-E-A, E-E-E, or O, O. So you do end up with a lot of things that have the same identity. I won't get into it here, but that doesn't really affect the results too much. So if you're worried about, good for you. Okay, so what we do is we train them on stems of this tape 5 times each, and then give them 2 alternative forced choice. In the stem was always the same. The only thing that was different was the suffix. So if you had gay versus go, me versus go. So all that you're really choosing between is me, mu, gay, go. Okay, so if you learned where you when to say gay, when to say go, then you should be picking it at the right time. Okay. And if you have items that are old, these are just items that are in your training set. So you could potentially not learn anything except a vocabulary list and get all of these right. And then the new items are items that are pretty similar to the ones that you heard, but they have different stems. So in order to get this right, you have to extend what you heard a little bit to double stems. Okay. So this is the result. So in the mid-vowel trigger condition, we can see that it's very clearly above chance and above the control. Whereas in the high vowel trigger condition, only the old items are above chance and not as quite as good. But really what we see is the difference in the novel items here, and they're not significantly different from the control. So what that tells us is that our participants in the mid-vowel trigger condition learned it, and they did somewhat better, particularly for the new items, compared to the high vowel triggers, which didn't really seem to learn the language. So to summarize again, participants were more likely to learn the round harmony pattern with mid-vowels, and participants failed to learn with high vowels, and that's the trend that we see typologically. Mid-vowels are more likely to trigger harmony. And you don't have to take just my word for it, because Lentil Kemper recently did a study. They're not exactly the same, but he looked at the similar question, and he found a similar result. So that's great, because he found that British English speakers, in terms of generalization, showed a similar trend. So we see that for round harmony, as well as height harmony. And so height harmony has a different typological restriction. Generally speaking, front vowels are more likely to undergo height harmony than back vowels. And back vowels tend to just be more restricted. So if you are a front vowel, you can sort of be, you can undergo harmony following a back vowel or front vowel, doesn't matter. But if you're a back vowel, you have to also be back. Okay? So they're just more restricted in that way. And some of the reasons that folks have stated for why this might be is kind of an indirect reasoning. So if you remember, I just talked about for round harmony, non-high round vowels are marked. So if you're thinking about height harmony as a lowering process, which a lot of these height harmony languages are analyzed that way, you're lowering, and your back vowel, you're likely to be round. So if you're a back vowel, you're likely to be round. So if you want to go from high to low, or high to not high, then that's putting you in a bad position. So you don't want to be a non-high round vowel. So just avoiding that could also trigger that. Other people have said that there are greater co-articulation in the F1 for height than in the front than the back, which if we think of vowel harmony as being phonologization of co-articulation, then that makes sense. So for this experiment, we hypothesized that learners will be more likely to learn the height harmony when it has front vowels. And that learners will be more likely to generalize to front vowel suffixes in height harmony than back. And that follows that asymmetric generalization, and that front vowels are more willing to undergo height harmony, whereas back vowels require. So what we did was we exposed participants to this height harmony, and then in this case, the suffixes were either back, front or back, and the stems were all the same regardless of the condition. Okay, so what we had was a front vowel suffix training, and this seems to be a little bit fuzzy, so you can take off your glasses and yes, front vowel suffix. You might have so there was a C, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, and then either E or A following that for the front vowels, and then for the back vowels, O or U. And this was, so the stems were the same, but the suffixes that alternated were different. And then given the test, they were given 3 types of test items. And these could have been old stem with a novel suffix. So for example, to see if they generalize, say, from front vowel suffix to back vowel suffix, but they always contain the same stem. So yes, so we had this kind of training where you'd have the stem, C stem, followed by the suffix, which was just a vowel here, 24 pairs repeated 5 times, just like before, and 2 alternative force choice. So there were 3 types of test items here. The first type was just like literally, take from the training set. So beta gay versus beta go versus beta go. This is the right answer, and you can get that just by having memorized what you heard. Then you had new stems with old suffixes. So these were suffixes that you heard. So if you were in the high vowel condition, then they were high vowels. If you were in front vowel condition, you were in the front vowels. If they were in the back vowel condition, you'd be in the back. You get back vowels. Okay. And then we switched it up to look at generalization. So there were old stems with new suffixes. And so if you had the back vowel suffix in training, then you would get the front vowel suffix at the test, or vice versa. And so here are the results. What you see is that here's the front vowel suffixes. They're doing better than the control and chance for the old items and the new items. But when we give them the back vowel suffixes that they have to now generalize to, they're not doing very well. They're just around chance. Okay. And here's something interesting is that the back vowel folks, they're not even doing very well even on items that they had heard, but they do seem to do well on these items, which are actually very similar to items that they heard because they're stems that they heard. It's just the suffix is now back. So it's almost as if they had learned some kind of height harmony pattern, but they were reluctant to apply it only to that suffixes. So you see this nice interaction. So what we found were that participants were more likely to select the height harmonic item when the suffix was front. That's in the front vowel training condition, that was the old suffix items, and then in the back vowel training condition, that was the new. Right. So yeah, participants were more likely to learn heart harmony applies to front vowels, and that's the typological trend that we've seen. Front vowels are more likely to undergo harmony than back vowels. And I haven't seen an exact application of this, but within the realm of harmony, Morton did a really cool study where he showed that height harmony is more likely to be learned than another type of pattern that is equally phonetically salient, a height voice pattern, but is not mythological purpose. All right. So for study 1, we've shown that learners of both ground harmony and height harmony follow the typological preferences in their learning. And we have relatively simple manipulations, so stuff like vowel heart, height, vowel backness. So we know that we're tapping into something languagey because that's the only thing that's different, and it's causing differences in their learning. So that's it. I should also mention that we also did for these studies a relatively cursory, but we did look into relative frequency in English as well as other control conditions to make sure that it wasn't just a bias or something that they already had in English, and we didn't see an effect. So we know that this does seem to be about learning rather than about tapping into just latent knowledge, which would still be interesting. It's just, so in our next study, we're going to look at morphology. So the idea is that learners cope with complex morphological systems when the pattern contains some kind of systematicity or subregularity. So specifically, patterns with shared sounds or phonological similarity within the morphological pattern. So one of the things that you might notice when you learn about different languages is that a lot of times morphemes that have similar meanings often have similar sounds. So just a basic example would be German. There, now, them, they all start with B. Okay, there's no necessarily reason that it starts with B, at least as far as I know. Historically, I'm sure there's a good explanation. But one thing that could be is that, and this nice happy coincidence could make it easier for a learner to find the determiners and make these morphological relationships. So we're going to tap into this kind of generalization into a controlled setting. So what we did in study 2 was we looked at morphological markings, and I'm calling these complex, but I'm sure people study languages that are, you would laugh at how not complex they are compared to some of the languages that actually exist. But, so we're marking objects for gender and number. So we're being very transparent, well, semi-transparent about gender and number. And so the idea is that masculine has this bow tie, although some participants, I am considering changing this because some participants thought it was a hair bow. And curses for females, and then neither just have a mark. And then singular is 1, dual is 2, and then plural is always 5. So in experiment 2A, we explored the hypothesis that learnability of this 3x3 gender number system is easiest when there's some kind of phonological regularity at this. So what we did was we compared morphemes that were randomly distributed, the same 9 morphemes randomly distributed, to one that was more systematically distributed. So we had an auditory representation of a stem with a suffix related to it, and then they would see a picture denoting what that word would mean. So if we saw this picture, this would be 2, dual, and then bow ties, so they're this gender. And I don't worry too much about the gender in this because they're clearly marked for some kind of category, so they're just, you know, you can think that class 1, 2, and 3, or nothing person. So if you might hear this, Befa, and then depending on your condition, this is dual and masculine, so you hear Befa P in the random condition, and then also Befa P in this one. So you hear Befa P, and there are 9 suffixes. So you can see in the random condition, you have me, me, mo, go, gi, ge, ki, to, he. But there's no real way of systematically characterizing things. They're kind of random. So you have to kind of learn all of them. Whereas in the systematic condition, you see that all the neuters start with M, all the feminines start with G, all the masculines start with P, and all the singulars start with O, the dual start with B, and the plural start with A. So there's some regularity there. So you have the same 9 morphemes, they're just arranged in a way that makes them mean something. So what we had, each pair was spoken with this trisyllabic word, and so the learner has to learn that they thought is dolphin, even though we don't actually test on that, they don't know that. And he means dual masculine. So we had 54 words that were based on the 12 stems paired with a subset of different suffixes. So they're not hearing all possible combinations, so we can hold some out for the test later. And then those were repeated 8 times in a random order. And then the test was you would get the picture, and then you would hear 2 words, and you would have to decide which word matched what you saw. So, and the stem was always the same. So, based on P versus based on me. So, if you were paying attention, you would know based on P is the correct answer. So, we had 3 types of test items. One, it's just this kind of sanity check a little bit, where we see they're just old items. So the stem is familiar, the picture is familiar, everything is familiar. The test has a novel stem and a novel picture, meaning that the suffix is something that they hadn't actually seen in that combination. And then we had a third item where we gave them animals that they hadn't yet seen in this experiment before. So, for example, we had a dolphin. Now we might give them an armadillo they hadn't seen yet. So see if they generalize it to normal. And the results here are pretty clear. The red bars are a random condition, and they're not doing well. They do not seem to be selecting the correct item at a rate greater than chance. Whereas our systematic folks seem to be doing fine. They seem to have figured it out and learned the language and at a rate greater than what we saw. So what this is all telling us is that the systematicity seemed to have made it possible for them to learn this in a very short amount of time. So it's easier to learn in a non-systematic way. We also know that if we have some of this systematicity, we can learn the language, and something that is complex when there's some kind of structure or predictability. And there's another study by Katya Kurtzova that showed similar findings, where she looked at this kind of complexity in morphology and found a similar result. So it's not just my lab is showing this, but others. So now that we can kind of see that we can learn these kind of patterns with systematicity, we might wonder about other aspects of more complex morphology, specifically things like neutralization and syncretism. And does that actually ease the burden of marked categories? So we know that languages rarely tend to mark every aspect, so that sort of 9 suffix thing is actually something that you would rarely find in languages. Most paradigms with all the different suffixes have some amount of syncretism or overlap or homophony in some way. And what that might do is, as Mueller sort of cites that's likely to ease the burden on the learner because you're reducing the amount of morphological sums that you have to do. However, doing it randomly may not be as beneficial than doing it in a systematic way. And so what we find is that neutralization of categories and syncretism appears to follow cross-linguistic trends. Particularly, there's a preference for dual neutralized into plural. So we know that in English, if you see 2 of something, you use the plural form. Okay? And generally speaking, if a category is marked, like the dual, it's more likely to end up having neutralization or syncretism in some way than unmarked categories. So we're going to explore this a little bit by looking at neutralization of number into gender. So which categories do languages tend to neutralize? And we know that marked categories tend to dual tend to do this. So we're going to see, does this affect how they learn? So the hypothesis that we're going to be testing is that learners are going to be more likely to benefit from neutralization in a marked category compared to, say, an unmarked category. And the marked category dual is going to be most learnable when there's neutralization there. So the design that we have here is pretty similar to experiment 2A, where we have these kind of 3 by 3 categories. They're marked as the same. And we have dual, singular, and plural, masculine, feminine, and neuter. But now we have 3 different conditions. In the first condition, it's where the gender is neutralized in the singular. And this is actually the most cross-linguistically weird because singular is the unmarked category, and so it should have the most distinctions where now in this has the least. And so you can kind of see that here. go is the same for singular, masculine, feminine, neuter, and then we have 6 other morphemes here. Okay. And then we have gender neutralization in the dual. So go is now the sort of frequent form, and then the other 6 morphemes there. That should be the most unmarked cross-linguistically because there we have this dual that is the most marked and it has the fewest number of forms. And then the plural is in here as well, where gender gets neutralized. So we had 12 different characters. So and then of course there's 9 different suffixes here. You can count every single one. So that's 208, and you can check my math. That should be right. So we give participants half of those in the training, and then we give them the other half at test. So everything they see is something that they haven't seen exactly before. And here are our results. What we're doing is we're comparing how well they did on items that were singular, so the picture, and then 2 different words. Okay, singular, dual, and plural. So here you have when syncretism happens in the singular. And what you see is that there really isn't any benefit to syncretism in the singular. So they're doing okay, like better than chance for the singular and the plural, but they're not better than chance statistically for the dual. And they don't seem to get any boost. The fact that even though all of these in the singular are just go, so it's just one thing they have to learn, they still seem to be okay. However, in the dual, we seem to do pretty well here. This is significantly better than these 2 combined. So we know that they're doing better, and they're actually learning the dual here, okay, which makes sense. There's only one thing that has to learn. Okay. And then when we have syncretism in the plural, well, they really don't seem to learn what's happening in the dual. They seem to do better overall in the plural. So what we find is that generally speaking, in order to learn the dual for our English speakers, they needed to have the gender neutralized there. Okay? And neutralization only seems to be helpful in the dual and plural. So yeah. Dual is easiest to learn when the gender is neutralized, and overall we have the best when dual and plural are neutralized the gender, and the worst when singular. Overall means we're pretty much the same, so we're not really, so it didn't seem that overall the language was easier to learn, it was really about the specific categories. So for study 2, I kind of shown you how morphological systems that generate paradigms are easier to learn when they have some kind of systematicity, but that systematicity seems to matter, particularly for the marked category. Complex morphological systems are maximally learnable when they adhere to cognitive constraints. So the next question that we'll be looking at is, can this kind of morphology be helpful for learning in other ways? So specifically looking at word learning and referential uncertainty or ambiguity. So the idea is that morphology and all of these complicated morphological markers could be good for something besides helping to refer to things, but also to be used to help bootstrap other aspects of the language, particularly in word learning. So one of the problems when we think about word learning is this problem that was noted by Klein, who talked about referential uncertainty. And so he sort of posed this idea that you have, you're with somebody who's speaking another language, and you see some sort of furry animal, and the person says, guy. Well, how are you going to know what in the world he's talking about? Most people think maybe you're referring to the rabbit. And why would you think that? Well, particularly because we use heuristics, and sort of we have inferences that we use biases about what words mean. So 2 ones that get talked about a lot are the shape bias and mutual exclusivity. So for example, if I tell you that this thing is a dax, and then I show you another thing like this, I don't have one, but it's green and plastic, but it has the same shape, you'll probably say, yeah, that's also a dax. Even though they have different shapes, they adhere to the same shape. And mutual exclusivity is the fact that you didn't, if I asked you which one of these things, don't forget that I just told you that this is DAX. If I asked you which one of these two things is the DAX, the fact that you know that this is what one is should lead you to just guess. I don't know what this is, so it's probably this. And this kind of thing can happen as well as using statistics as a heuristic. So in the paradigm that was developed by Smith and others, you can sort of test how people figure out meanings of words based on hearing them in multiple contexts with multiple situations over time. So when you pair a word and its label over multiple trials, then you can learn the word. So just to give you an example, supposing that I asked you which one of these two things in some made-up language is a DAX. Well, you wouldn't know because they're just two things, so you might just guess it's this one. Okay? And then I ask you, well, now which one do you think is the DAX? Okay. Now the apple has now appeared in both context of the DAX, so you can be fairly certain that it was not the type of, and not the light bulb either. So this is a simplified version of this kind of task, but the idea is the same. We're going to implement is that can you use morphology when referential uncertainty is very high? Okay, so would the morphology help you reduce that referential uncertainty? So our hypothesis is that when referential uncertainty is high, or even maybe when it's low too, we can use that to morphological categories or other information we have to help infer the novel words. So what we did in this experiment was we exposed participants to a similar kind of cross-situational word learning task where there were 3 types of words, and all of the words ended in one of 3 suffixes. Each word ended in one of 3 suffixes, u, k, or dem. And the control condition had the suffixes randomly assigned. They didn't mean anything. They were arbitrary categories, so they were not going to be useful in terms of inferring anything else. Whereas in the experimental condition, the suffixes are assigned based on a category. So blue was always an animal, hay was always a fruit, and dough was always a vehicle. Okay? And so what we had, what they would do is they would hear a single lexical item, so they saw blue, and then they would see 3 pictures on the screen, and they had to select which picture they thought was the word, and they were encouraged to guess. In fact, the title in Sona is Guess What the Word Means. So they're literally, that's what they come in thinking they're going to do, and that's what they do. So we have 6 target words in each category for 18 total words, and then each one is presented 6 times in a random order. We don't give them any feedback, so they don't know if they're right. Many participants leave the room in a very confused state because they don't know. And there's 2 learning parts. So the first part is low referential uncertainty. So our 18 words are always presented next to 2 decoy items that are not of the category that we're talking about, and there's a lot of them. So they never get, so here's a lemon, there's never going to be another animal or another fruit or another vehicle in this scene. There's always, it's just the fruit. Okay? So they're very frequent, all sorts of useful items all together. So the referential uncertainty is fairly low because they're not seeing present a lot, but they are seeing the lemon 6 times. So this task is doable. Okay. The second task is not doable based on pilot studies. It is high referential uncertainty. I need to work out the math on this, but in terms of how incredibly uncertain it is. But you have the same procedure, but now you have 18 words that you don't know about, but they're the same category. And now the categories are always competing. So you always have an animal, you always have a fruit, and you always have a vehicle. Always, and they're all equally off. So this is very hard because you're not getting any feedback. So you might hear the word for fruit, and then you might click on, and then in the very next trial, you'll see a fruit, but you'll hear another word because the actual target is something else. So it's very hard. It's very impossible. So the question is, can you do this? Well, it's actually not very possible. As bad as we think. So the way we did the data analysis is whether do the participants click on the correct image for the word. Okay, and so we can do this two ways just to see. One is just overall out of 6, how many did you get right? And then the other one is based on another paper that used cross-situational learning, where you just see in the last time that they saw the image, did they get it right? So in the last time that they heard the word for lemon, was it right? With the logic that maybe the first time you get it wrong, because you're still figuring things out, but then by the end, if you really learned it, you should get it. And whereas if you're guessing, so that's kind of that logic. The hypothesis is that participants should do well in part 1 because it's relatively easy, but worse in part 2, and particularly more important, that participants in the experimental condition where the actual morphemes mean something will do better than the ones in the control. And that's actually what we find. So participants in part 1 are pretty much the same, regardless of what they were given. But participants in part 2, these are all the same people in part 1. In part 2, they kind of didn't do as well. But luckily, or not luckily, but the folks who actually could use the ending to determine the word used it at least somewhat. So they outperformed that. And this is a little bit cleaner when you look at the final item. But the statistics that we ran the other day are yeah. So hypotheses were supported. So when referential uncertainty was high, which is part 2, participants in the experimental condition outperformed the control. And the only difference was that the morphology actually could be used to figure out what the word means. So that's the only other explanation I can think of why they did that. So we can think of this as morphological cues, bootstrapping word learning in cases of high referential uncertainty. So that's one way in which complex morphological systems can be difficult for second language learners, we know. But it might be helpful in first language learners because they don't know the word fruit or orange. And so they might be able to use, hey, this is the plural thing, or this is the subject of the sentence, than to know what something being referred to. So this could be, so one question to keep going with this is what other things could morphology actually do for a learner? So like why make our systems more complicated? Well, if it helps you in some other way, that we did. So when we think about how languages are interacting, we may want to wonder, well, how did they get to be this way? Is it some kind of intelligent design? What we do see is that the robust patterns in typology tend to be easier to learn. There's obviously some exceptions everywhere. And of course, we talk about these possible reasons, like innate grammatical principles, the general cognitive and attentional processes, as well as the universal constraints on the fact that on speech perception and production, the fact that if we're talking about speech, we all have mouths and we all have ears, and they all work relatively similar regardless of who you are. So that can affect that, and all these interactions. So that's kind of the way we're going, is trying to link all of the sort of design of languages to the things that we are actually good at when we try to learn languages. So today I've talked to you about the miniature language learning technique in order to connect typology and learnability. I looked at it through 3 lenses: morphology, spell harmony, technology, and in terms of word learning. So this kind of research program can help shed light on universal language, so we can understand why is it that what makes languages easy to learn, especially for babies, and what are those underlying principles that fit the cognitive mechanisms of learning, how we actually pay attention to what kind of inferences we actually make when we're trying to do this. And so we can understand why some patterns of language may be frequent across languages of the world, and while other patterns may be untested this, or just infrequent. So of course, more work needs to be done in terms of not only the experimental stuff, but the other work that linguists do. If nobody in linguistics is doing the typologies, typological studies, and the phonetic studies, then this would make any sense. Like we have nothing to stand on, and so it's all good converging evidence coming together. So with that, I would like to just say thank you to everybody, and particularly all of the undergrads. I'm sure I'm missing some, for Paul for the invitation, as well as like a lot of participants. Thanks. And